Hey, OneLife Youth, it's Pastor Mike. I hope you're having a great week. I hope that you are enjoying the start of your summer vacation. Welcome to summer. It's awesome. We are so excited for you guys that you have finally made it through, that it's finally over. This is great. I want to ask you a question today. Have you ever asked the question, God, why me? God, why now? God, why am I in this place? God, what are you doing with my life? You know, if you've had any of those questions, I want you to know that you are not alone, that these are valid questions that I've asked myself, that I have heard other people ask as well. If you have ever asked those questions, that's totally all right, and that is very normal, especially if you've been a follower of Jesus for any length of time. Well, in Esther chapter 4, verse 11, we find, starting in verse 11 is where we're going to be at today, okay? Mordecai, just a quick recap of last week. Mordecai has had this very intense moment with Haman. Haman is the villain in the story. Haman is a top official right below the king. Because of his position in the palace, the king has put a rule into place that anytime Haman walks by, people would bow and basically pay him honor and tribute to him. And so as Haman walks by, Mordecai refuses to bow because he is not going to bow to anybody that's not his king. And so this has got Haman just irate. He is super angry in the moment. And so he goes to the king and he convinces the king to allow him to have all of the Jews executed as a punishment to Mordecai. It's not that he hates all the Jews, he just hates Mordecai, and this is the way he's going to take out his anger, is by punishing all of them. And so he's got a really big head, okay? And so this really puts a lot of pressure and a lot of tension and a lot of uncertainty on Mordecai. And so he does the one thing that he knows to do. He reaches out to his cousin Esther, who is now the queen of the kingdom. And so he reaches out to her and he basically begins to talk to her about the idea of going to the king to convince the king to lift this punishment to save their people, to save the Jews. But the problem is Esther now has some decisions to make. And these are not easy decisions. You would think it would be easy to say, okay, well, I'm the queen, I can go to the king now, and things are going to be fine because I've got some power. But the truth is, back then, that's not how this worked. Back then, if you were not summoned by the king to come into his presence, your life was at risk. And so Esther is writing to Mordecai, basically stating her case, basically trying to help him to understand what is going to happen if she tries to go talk to the king. And so we pick this up in verse 11. Esther chapter 4, verse 11. We find that the queen is writing back to Mordecai. And she says this in her letter. In verse 11, all the king's officials and even the people in the provinces know that anyone who appears before the king in his inner court without being invited is doomed to die, unless the king holds out the gold scepter, and the king has not called for me to come to him for 30 days. For 30 days, it would be so much easier at this point in time if the king would call upon his queen. But unfortunately, that is not what's going to happen. So she is honestly taking her entire life into her hands. She has to trust God to keep her protected. And so we see that she is going to make this decision, this hard decision. But first, Mordecai has to kind of talk to her and convince her a little further and really push this with her because she is so worried about it. And so in verse 13, Mordecai responds back to Esther by saying this: "Don't you think for a moment that because you're in the palace, you will escape when all the other Jews are killed? If you keep quiet at a time like this, deliverance and relief for the Jews will arise from some other place, but you and your relatives will die. Who knows? This is like the most famous line in this entire story. Who knows if perhaps you were made queen for just such a time as this? You see, God does not waste an opportunity. Sometimes God puts us in places where we're going to make a difference. Sometimes God puts us in places because it's where we need to be to grow. It's where we need to be to learn to trust Him. Maybe we're going to save our entire people. We don't know. God does a lot of things that we don't always understand. But the truth is this, students. God always has our best in mind. He always knows what He's doing. And we just need to learn to trust the process. We need to learn to trust. It's called faith. Okay, we need to learn to have faith when we don't see the end coming. And so Esther needed to learn to trust in God in this moment. And so here's what she says to Mordecai. In verse 15 it says, "Then Esther sent this reply to Mordecai, 'Go and gather together all the Jews of Susa and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. My maids and I will do the same. And then, though it is against the law, I will go in to see the king. And if I must die, I must die.'" And it goes on to say that Mordecai went away and did exactly what he was told by Esther. We don't always know what's going to happen. We don't always know what things are going to look like. But we can know that when God is guiding us and God is leading us to do something, and God has placed us in a place that we are in at the moment, God always has our best in mind. And sometimes we just need to trust Him. Now, I know that sometimes we find ourselves in really bad situations, and those can be because we've made poor choices. And that's very, very different than what we're talking about here. When we learn to trust God and not ourselves, God will lead us and direct us and guide us where we need to be. And so I want to leave you with that today. Trust God. Trust what He's doing in your life. Put your hope, your future in Him, and let Him direct you. You guys have a great week. God bless you. We miss you like crazy. We love you. We can't wait to see you. Also, just so you know, June 20th is going to be our garage sale. I am super pumped about that. I know we've already talked about this. We've been talking about it like crazy for months. But you guys, it's literally just not Saturday, but the following Saturday, okay, the 20th. It is really around the corner. It is coming fast. And so I want you to know that Shannon and I, we have, and Logan and Katie and a few other people have been helping like crazy. We've already been receiving donations, and there is a ton of stuff. People have been very, very generous, and people are believing in what you are doing. People are believing in you, the youth of our church. They are investing in you. And so I want to encourage you to join us on the 20th. Help us out. We would love to be partners in this with you. And we're gonna raise our youth budget. It's gonna be amazing. So don't forget to show up anytime that day. There'll be plenty of work to do. So you guys have a great week. We'll see you soon. God bless you. Bye.